I'm John Leader, counting down the hits. And the band in this week's Countdown America Spotlight didn't believe they were famous until they left home. They're Chicago. And it took a trip to Europe, says bass player Peter Cetera, to realize their trademark sound was not only popular in America, but had worldwide appeal.
Europe sort of made it all, really like, oh, wow, we are making it. And they love our music. And even the Germans, who don't even talk English, love our music, and they even know the words.
There have been plenty of Chicago hits qualifying in the worldwide sing-along category since the first time they played in Europe, including 3 number ones. The first time Chicago hit the top of the chart was with If You Leave Me Now in 1976. Peter Cetera wrote it and says it, too, made a global impression.
I'm kind of proud about this, If You Leave Me Now, because it sort of, it was number one all over the world. It was kind of nice hearing it, wherever we went.
And now we'll be hearing it all across America in this week's Countdown America Spotlight. Here's Chicago with If You Leave Me Now, their first number one song from the fall of 1976. I'm John Leader, and in this week's Countdown America Spotlight is a group with a lengthy and successful track record in the hit song department. They're Chicago, and they've been releasing albums since the late 60s. Now, record companies just don't let you continue to spend money recording unless you're successful. So by now, members of Chicago should probably know a little bit about being rich and famous. Bass player Peter Cetera says, not necessarily.
I wish I was richer and famouser. No, actually, we had a dry spell for a few years, and I think we sort of learned what rich and famous was when we had to stop and think about it. I think when you don't have any thoughts about buying something or you just don't think about it. That's sort of rich and famous.
And Chicago's Peter Cetera says it's the famous part that sneaks up when it's least expected.
I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I'm standing in the middle of this Indian market looking at jewelry, and somebody came up from England and said, "Aren't you blah blah blah?" And I said, "Yeah." And he saw us at the Hammersmith Odeon or something years ago. Well, that just kind of tickled me. That kind of stuff makes it all worthwhile when just in the middle of nowhere somebody will go, hey,
From the middle of nowhere to this week's Countdown America Spotlight, here's Chicago with their second number one hit, Hard to Say I'm Sorry, from the fall of 1982. I'm John Leader, and in this hour's Countdown America Spotlight, Chicago, a band who've been successful for over 16 years. Surprisingly, one thing that didn't play a big part in achieving that success was extensive training, formal lessons. Keyboard player Bobby Lamm says Chicago's sound is the result of instinct rather than training.
I wish I had a great classical background. I envy people who have a classical background to build on. But I think I've learned, so much more after what little schooling really stuck. I learned so much more about music, being in the band. But it can be frustrating not to have that background, that schooling, So I guess you're just sort of stuck with instinct and taste and whatever else you can learn from, each other and other musicians, the experience of doing things.
Let's hear it for experience. For Chicago, it's working out just fine. In fact, they make a habit of placing their name on top of the music chart. And that experience, says Chicago bass player Peter Cetera, has also taught them to take turns in the writing department.
It's sort of always been that way. Who's hot at the moment? I mean, Bobby has his couple of years of being the hot writer, and Jimmy was the hot writer, and I was the hot writer. So whoever was the hot writer sort of hems and haws, and sometimes kicks the ground and goes, I'm not doing that.
For Chicago's third number one hit, that problem was solved by 2 writers outside the band. In this week's Countdown America Spotlight, here's Chicago, adding their chart-topping touch to a song written for them, Hard Habit to Break, number one last October. Inspiration is something all of us look for, and the group in this week's Countdown America Spotlight is no exception. Except they seem to have found it, and a hit version of it as well. They're Chicago. And keyboard player Bobby Lamm says what he finds inspirational among friends is stimulating conversation, and that doesn't include a discussion of his star status.
I used to have some friends where we would sit down to dinner and all the conversation would be about me and my life and what I do. you know. And I got so sick of talking about that because, you know, that's not what what I do is not what I am. You know, I can think and I read and, you know, I think about a lot of things other than music and what I do. And especially when I'm sitting down at the table with people that I already know and, you know, I don't want to talk about that much about, you know, I'll share about when I'm excited about something, when I'm happy about something related to my career. But other than that, you know, I don't need to talk about it.
Chicago's Peter Cetera agrees with his bandmate. He finds inspiration in sincerity, whether it's from friends or fans.
First you have the wackos, so you totally disregard the wackos. Then you have some really honest people that write you nice letters and that mean well. And I sort of look for the honesty from people because I don't need the other thing. So that's all, you know, really, you know, I look for now. Somebody that likes me for, you know, for what I stand for and who I am, rather than being somebody on 17 albums. You know, I think that's what everybody looks for.